In early April 2026, amid the intense ongoing air campaign of Operation Epic Fury, an American F-15E weapon systems officer was shot down and isolated behind enemy lines for over 48 hours. To bring that single American home, the U.S. military and the CIA unleashed a staggering air armada. They established a forward airfield deep inside Iran. They bombed enemy convoys into oblivion, lost multiple aircraft, and engaged in a massive, close-quarters firefight against Iranian commandos. And when disaster struck and 2 American C-130 transport planes were disabled on the ground in the middle of Iran, the ghost of the 1980 Operation Eagle Claw disaster loomed over the entire mission. Today, we are looking at how the United States Special Operations Command pulled off a rescue that will be studied in war colleges for decades. Let's get into it. In the early morning hours of Friday, April 3rd, an F-15E Strike Eagle belonging to the 494th Fighter Squadron was conducting a deep strike mission over Iran. The F-15E is a dual-role fighter designed to fight its way deep into enemy territory, drop precision munitions, and fight its way out. It operates with a crew of 2, a pilot up front, and a weapons systems officer in the back seat managing the radar and targeting pods. While the U.S. had successfully degraded Iran's radar-guided air defense network, the low-altitude airspace remained incredibly lethal. According to official briefings, an Iranian soldier got lucky with a manpass. The missile tracked Dude 44 and, as the White House described it, got sucked right in by the engine. With the aircraft catastrophically damaged, both crew members ejected into the darkness over Kahramanmahal and Bakhtiari province. Almost immediately, the U.S. military spun up a rapid response CSAR package. During the daylight hours of Friday, April 3rd, an element of HH-60W Jolly Green 2 helicopters pushed into Iranian airspace to recover the pilot, call sign Dude 44 Alpha. According to General Dan Kane, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, this initial daylight rescue was brutally contested. The helicopters were engaged by heavy small arms fire. The fuselage of the lead rescue chopper was struck multiple times, and several crew members on board sustained injuries. Despite the damage and bleeding crew members, they successfully extracted the pilot and made it back to friendly territory. But the weapons systems officer, Dude 44 Bravo, was still missing. He had sustained an ankle injury during the ejection and was completely isolated deep inside the Zagros Mountains. For the next 48 hours, the WSO survival came down to his SEER training: survival, evasion, resistance, and escape. Armed with only a sidearm, an encrypted radio, and a location beacon, the colonel made a textbook evasion move. Despite his injured ankle, he climbed higher into the craggy mountain terrain and wedged himself into a crevice. Elevation makes you harder to track, harder to ambush, and improves the line of sight for encrypted radio bursts. But while the WSO was hiding, the Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and local nomadic tribesmen were mobilizing a massive dragnet to find him. State television even advertised a reward for his capture. This is where the operation shifted from a purely military endeavor to a masterclass in intelligence warfare. To buy the downed airman time, CIA launched a highly coordinated deception campaign. U.S. intelligence intentionally flooded Iranian communication networks with false intelligence. They planted fabricated radio traffic and digital breadcrumbs, suggesting that U.S. forces had already located the WSO in a completely different sector of the country. This psychological operation was brilliant. It forced Iranian commanders to second-guess their search grids, redirecting thousands of troops to chase ghosts. Meanwhile, U.S. Central Command used highly classified assets to definitively pinpoint the WSO's actual beacon in the mountains. Once they had a lock on his position, the rescue package was authorized. The core operation consisted of a dozen or so combat fighter jets to establish air superiority and provide close air support. This strike package was escorted by 4 electronic warfare aircraft, likely Navy EA-18G Growlers, tasked with jamming enemy communications and blinding residual radar threats. Finally, 5 specialized rescue and transport aircraft were deployed to actually pick the man up. But the most dangerous job in this dozen aircraft strike package belonged to the A-10 Thunderbolt. In the combat search and rescue world, the A-10 performs the legendary Sandy role. The Sandy is the rescue escort and the on-scene commander. Their job is to fly incredibly low and slow over the terrain, deliberately drawing enemy fire so they can locate anti-aircraft threats, destroy them, and provide a safe corridor for the rescue helicopters. During the search for the WSO, the A-10 violently suppressed Iranian ground forces, engaging in close-quarters gunfights. But this came at a severe cost. During the operation, an A-10 performing the Sandy role took catastrophic damage from Iranian air defenses. The pilot miraculously managed to limp the dying aircraft out of Iranian airspace, flying all the way to the Strait of Hormuz before he was forced to eject over the Persian Gulf. He was safely recovered by Allied forces. The US was bleeding aircraft just to keep the airspace open, but they were not turning back. Now we arrive at the most harrowing and historically significant part of the entire operation. The Zagros Mountains are deep inside Iran. The HH-60W rescue helicopters do not have the fuel range to fly from friendly bases in Kuwait, loiter over a combat zone, and fly all the way back. Usually, they refuel midair. But due to the intense anti-aircraft threat, commanders authorized a wildly audacious tactical maneuver. They decided to build a gas station on the ground, deep behind enemy lines. This is known as a FARP, a forward arming and refueling point. Under the cover of darkness, U.S. Special Operations MC-130J descended onto an abandoned, austere dirt airfield in southern Isfahan province. They landed to offload fuel bladders, secure the perimeter, and act as a staging hub for MH-6 and AH-6 Little Bird helicopters operated by the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, the Night Stalkers. But no plan survives first contact with the environment. As the massive transport planes touched down on the unimproved dirt strip, disaster struck. Two of the multi-million-dollar transport planes became completely stuck in the mud and dirt. They were immobilized. Suddenly, you have elite American commandos, helicopter fuel, and disabled cargo planes stranded on the ground in the middle of a country actively trying to kill them. For the commanders back at Central Command, this exact scenario was a waking nightmare. It had haunting shades of Operation Eagle Claw in April 1980, when a collision between helicopters and AC-130 at a remote Iranian staging area called Desert One resulted in the deaths of 8 American servicemen and the utter failure of the hostage rescue mission. But the U.S. military of 2026 is vastly different from 1980. They are built for extreme contingencies. With their primary exfiltration assets stuck in the mud, commandos on the ground established a hard defensive perimeter while Central Command called an immediate audible. 3 fresh transport planes were dynamically retasked and flown straight into the hot zone to extract the stranded personnel. But they couldn't just leave intact MC-130J and highly classified Little Bird helicopters behind for the IRGC to capture, reverse engineer, and parade on state television. It is standard military practice to deny the enemy any usable equipment. Before the Special Operations Forces boarded the replacement transports, they rigged the stranded aircraft with high explosives. As the rescue force lifted off, they detonated the charges. According to photographic evidence, U.S. forces completely demolished 2 MC-130J and up to 4 MH-6 and AH-6 Little Birds in place. Later that day, Iranian media proudly published images of the smoldering wreckage, claiming they had destroyed the planes. In reality, the U.S. blew up their own aircraft to protect national security secrets. While the FARP crisis was being handled, the actual extraction of the WSO was taking place on the mountainside. A joint task force, widely reported to include elements of SEAL Team 6 and Air Force Special Warfare, inserted into the Zagros Mountains and physically linked up with the WSO. But by this point, Iranian forces had cut through the CIA's deception campaign and converged on the location. What followed was a brutal, close-quarters infantry battle. U.S. commandos willingly stepped between the wounded American aviator and advancing Iranian troops, unleashing a relentless hail of suppressive fire. To break the Iranian advance, the U.S. called in the heavy hitters. According to CBS News, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth authorized U.S. bombers to drop massive 2,000-pound and 5,000-pound JDAMs directly onto approaching Iranian military convoys, vaporizing the enemy reinforcements before they could reach the extraction zone. During the chaos, U.S. airstrikes actively eliminated Iranian commanders coordinating the hunt. The Iranian army later admitted that strikes in Isfahan killed 4 of its officers, while 3 members of the IRGC were also killed in the ground clashes. With covering fire raining down from the dozen combat jets circling above and commandos holding the line on the ground, the WSO was loaded onto a rescue helicopter. The aircraft pushed through the mountain valleys, evaded further anti-aircraft fire, and crossed international borders. Shortly after midnight on Sunday, April 5th, the U.S. aircraft touched down safely in Kuwait. The weapons systems officer immediately used a phone to call his wife and children. A few hours later, President Donald Trump took to Truth Social, posting, "We got him." This operation was a masterclass in tactical adaptability, but it came at a tremendous material cost. To rescue a single aviator, the United States lost an F-15E Strike Eagle, an A-10 Warthog, 2 MC-130J Commando 2 transport planes, multiple special operations helicopters, and reportedly an MQ-9 Reaper drone. 2 HH-60W rescue helicopters were heavily damaged, and several American service members sustained combat injuries. But here is the defining metric of success. Out of the hundreds of commandos, pilots, and intelligence officers involved in this incredibly dangerous, multi-day mission deep inside hostile territory, not a single American was killed. The rescue of Dude 44 Bravo is a testament to the unparalleled combat proficiency of the U.S. military's personnel recovery enterprise. It proves that the promise to leave no man behind isn't just a slogan printed on a recruitment poster. It is a doctrine backed by the deadliest combat aircraft on Earth, the clandestine genius of the CIA, and the absolute fearlessness of special operations forces who will fly into the darkest, deadliest places on the planet to bring one of their brothers home. As Operation Epic Fury continues, this incident sends a crystal clear message to the world. If you shoot down an American aviator, the U.S. military will move heaven and earth and burn millions of dollars in equipment just to get them back. But I turn it over to you guys. What do you think about the execution of this rescue operation? Does the deliberate destruction of multi-million-dollar C-130 and Little Birds justify the successful recovery of a single aviator? Drop your thoughts in the comments section below.